Hi everyone, this is Trisha, and I'm back today with another watercolor project for you. Today we're going to be doing the Covered Bridge mini set, and I'm going to be using all of the stamps within the set, along with the grasses from the foliage set. So let's get started. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ink up my Covered Bridge, and I'm going to be using the African Violet as well as the sepia. And this is going to give a nice warm brownish gray kind of a color. It's a great color to use for this set. So I'm going to ink up this little guy here. And I'm actually going to stamp it off on some scratch paper. Then I'm going to come in with my sepia and I'm going to ink right over that color. It's going to be a nice mixing of colors. And I'm going to stamp it in the middle of the page. Like that. I have my water. I'm going to just dip my brush, pinch it off, and I'm going to pull the color out of the lines. So I want to start where it would be the darkest. So over here on the side is going to be the darkest. And I'm just going to pull some of this color right into the middle of this wall here. I'm also going to pull some color into the inside here because that's going to be really, really dark. Pull some of this color out where our road would probably be. I'm going to come back in and do something with that in a little while. I'm going to pull some color out of the roof here. You don't want too much water on your brush. But you want some water so that we can pull some of this color out. You just don't want so much color, so much water that you're actually going to get rid of these lines. Okay. And then I'm going to go right underneath here too, because it's going to be really dark underneath that roof. Pull some up from the bottom. Let's give a little highlight here. Just to give it some dimension. And then I'm actually going to pull some of this color right into the windows, because those would be dark too on this right hand side. We're going to go back in with the African Violet and darken those up once they dry. Okay. Now I'm going to move on to these rocks underneath the covered bridge. Oh, that's a lot of water. Sometimes if you get too much water on your brush and you get a little crazy there, just take a piece of paper towel and dab it off, and then you can start over again. You don't want too much water, again, because you lose the integrity of the lines on the stamp. So I'm just going to pull this color right outside of these little rocks. making sure I leave a highlight of white space in the middle so it gives us the dimension that we're looking for. This top rock's going to be really dark on top. So I'm just kind of pulling the color just like that. Move a little bit of this color out into the background here. Just adds a little bit more dimension. You can also pull some out of the top of the roof, the sides here. Not a lot, just a little bit. Puts a little shadow behind it. All right. So let's take our African violet and we'll put some color on our palette. And I'm going to put some sepia on our palette as well, because we're going to use that as well. So first, I'm going to dip my brush in water. And then I'm going to add some sepia to this roof here. I want to make sure I leave a highlight. I don't want to color it in completely solid. Okay, and you can add a little sepia too. I mean, a little African. You can add a little African violet as well. If you want a darker tip of a roof, it's really up to you how you want to color this roof in. I wanted it really dark, so that's what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to add a little bit of African violet to these areas in here that I want really dark. Now that it's dry, it's very important that if you're going to add more color, you just make sure that what you did before is completely dry, or you'll just get you'll get some mush. It's a very technical term, mush. So yeah, you just want to make sure you color all that in, and we'll bring a little bit out here. This is going to be our road coming into our little covered bridge. And just add a little bit of water and bring the color out a little bit more. So we don't want it just to stand alone without any way to get it in and out of it. I'm going to do the same to the other side. Just going to put a little bit of a road here. Just the hint of a road. And now I can add some more color to the inside of these windows. Give them a little more dimension. Okay, so we're just going to add a little bit more color in here. And maybe pull some color down here to make it look like slats. Give it a little more interesting a look. And then just pull some of this color. Like that. Okay. Our next step, what I did was I actually created a mask with the covered bridge. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to stamp these trees behind this little covered bridge, and I don't want the trees to actually like be inside my bridge. So I'm going to mask this off so that way I can stamp it and it will make these trees look like they're behind the bridge. So I'm going to start with my sepia, and I'm going to ink up the bottom of these birch trees, and maybe add add some brown to a little bit of the top. Okay. Then I'm going to add some pine green to the top. These top branches, because we're going to actually we're going to use a technique to make these look like leaves. We're going to add some additional leaves later, but I'm going to show you how to create a base for those leaves so that it makes the trees look a little more full. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to stamp this right here next to the little road that we just built. And I'm going to go over again and double stamp that there. So now I'm going to take this tree here, the other tree in the set, and I'm going to ink that up with the sepia again, just like I did with the birch trees. And the pine green is going to go on the edges again. This one I'm going to stamp a couple times because I want to have a couple in the foreground and some in the background to give a little depth. Okay, so let's stamp this one, I think right here. And I'm going to stamp another one right next to it. And then a third one, I think, here. And maybe another one right there. I like to stagger them so that you get the more definition in the forest. It makes it look like there's more trees in the forest. If they're all in a straight line, it doesn't look as natural. So now we'll take the mask off. See how our trees now sit in the background? Now to do the birch trees, we want the birch trees to remain white. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pull the color out of the lines, but I'm going to do it into the background and not into the stamp itself. It's called negative painting. So I'm actually going to, what it will do is it actually will pop up the other items and make them look white, because we want them to stay white. So I'm just going to pull a little bit of this color out of these lines here. Now I don't have a lot of water on my brush. I don't want it to be very wet. So I just have a little bit of water. And I kind of make my paintbrush kind of has a point on it, because this is really detailed in here. And then now those are a little lighter. They look like they're set back just a little bit further than these. And we'll pull the rest of this color right out of the lines. We're going to add some sky in between there as well and give it just a little bit more dimension. All right. So we're about done with these. About done with the trunks of the trees. So now I'm going to show you how to create the base of our forest background. Okay. So now I've gotten some water. I'm going to have a little bit more water on my brush because what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to touch these green where we put the green on our trees, and I'm going to just make it really, I'm not really concerned about keeping the integrity of the stamp because I'm going to stamp some leaves anyways. So I just want to give a little bit of a base so when I do stamp those leaves, they look like they're part of a big green tree or big leafy tree. Still want to keep some white space in there. It's important to keep white space so that your image doesn't go flat. And you want to see some of those trunks, some of these tree branches in here as well. It just adds a little more interest. Now you see it's kind of blurry, which is exactly the look I'm going for here. And you can kind of bring that color down, and it can even come down into here. Okay. I think that's as good as it. That's how I want it to look. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to do the same thing over here to these trees. I'm actually going to soften the trunk and some of these branches a little bit, not much. I don't want them to get fat. I just want to make sure they look a little watercolory and make sure they pop out. This little one in the back here looks like it's set back. And then this little guy here. And then we're going to do the same technique that we did over here with the leaves. And we're just going to just touch all of these little guys here. This is going to really, when we do the leaves, you'll see why we did this background this way. It'll become more apparent then. But for now, we're just going to touch all these little guys in here. And make sure, again, you're leaving white space. You don't want to color everything in completely. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put some blue on my palette, and we're going to create our water for now. We're going to do our water. So I'm going to actually use a combination of the purple and the blue just to kind of deepen the blue up just a bit. So I really want it to be a little darker than just the blue. But when I go in for the first time, I want it to be kind of light. I want to be able to put in where I want this little stream to go, and I don't want it to be too dark, because you want to build the color up. You don't want to just lay a bunch of color down, because you can't take the color back most of the time. Depending on what colors you're using, you're going to have a hard time pulling that color back up if you didn't want it that dark. So we're going to just be careful around these little rocks, and then when you're making any kind of water, you're going to use brush strokes. So I'm just gonna, and as it comes closer to me, I'm going to make it go out just a little bit more. I really want this to look like it's in the water. And again, I know you're probably sick of hearing me say it, I'm going to leave some white. I'm going to leave some white space. Now I'm not going to go all the way up to the bottom of the little bridge, because I don't want the bridge to look like it's sitting in the water. I'm going to put some grasses behind there so that it actually looks like this might go back and curve off to the right, or just not stop right there. That's going to give us an illusion that we want. So let's put a little bit more blue in here, and then we'll just come back in here, and I'm just going to hit a couple of places and highlight them. Underneath this bridge is going to be pretty dark because of the bridge. It's going to give a nice shadow. So that's going to be very dark in there. And then I'm just going to paint a little bit more in here. Just like that. It's not stressful. This should be very, I find it very therapeutic to paint like this. So it shouldn't be stressful at all. I'm actually going to come in here and just soften some of this area here. Water is very easy to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let that dry, and then I'm going to come in and I'll darken it up again. I just don't want to darken it too much. I'm going to let it dry for a little while, for a few minutes. So while that's drying, I'm going to take the same blue, I'm going to lighten it up, some water, and I'm going to paint just a hint of a sky in the background. And then what you can do is once you get some of this blue in here, you can always go in and add a little bit more to darken it up. I kind of want it to fade to the bottom to get it a little bit lighter. So I'm going to wet my brush again, and then I'm just going to kind of let the water pull some of this color down so it looks like it's darker at the top and then fades down, which gives some nice dimension. These in here would be really dark. Then I think I can put a little bit in here, some out in the background here. You don't have to be crazy about filling in everything. Clouds are random, and if you don't really like the way they came out, you can always just put a little bit of water a little bit of water, and then you can just dab it off with a paper towel or any kind of towel that you might have nearby. Okay. I'll do a little bit more over here, some of this background here. Maybe I'll lighten this up a little bit more. That blue was a little dark for me. Make this stamp, this little flower stamp, which is actually leaves, and I'm going to show you how we're going to actually make those leaves come out a little bit more. So I'm going to ink up this little leaf stamp, and you know it's attached to your block the right way if your hearts are pointed upwards. So this is the pine green, and I'm just going to sporadically go around. I just want to give a little more definition to these leaves so these look a little bit fuller. So I'm going to ink it up, I'm going to stamp it a few times. No random, there's no pattern, no circle, just kind of stamping it in there, here and there. Now you can see the green that we did before is giving it a nice backdrop for these leaves. Just makes it look a lot fuller instead of some just random leaves that are just hanging out. Okay, maybe come down here. And I'm going to do the same over here. Such a great technique. And this little watercolor, this little bridge is great. You can put it on cards for any occasion. You know, if you have someone that really likes covered bridges, or you know, you need a sympathy card, it makes a great sympathy card. It's a beautiful image. And then I'm just going to come in, so now I'm just going to come in and I'm just going to soften some of these. I don't want too much water. I want to keep that definition a little bit. And I like how it's darker, so it gives a little bit of variation in color. which I like. I actually think I'm going to put one more right here. All right. I'm trying to make sure I leave some white space, but then I'm also getting the definition of these leaves in here. All right. So then we'll move on to our grasses. Here's our grass. And I'm just going to color it up. I'm going to start over here. I'm just going to stamp it. Remember, we ink and then we walk it out 4 or 5 times. So ink it up and then walk it out. I'm going to do the same thing here. Ink it up and walk it out. And right there. And then along this little road here, I'm going to ink that up. So now I want to put some grass over here along this, right along the rocks here, because I want it to look like they're hills. So I'm going to do my best to try to use this grass to create some variation so it makes it look like there's a little hill here. And you want to go right around along the water. Don't be afraid to go right in the water, because grass grows into the water. You want it to look as natural as possible. And then I'm going to just bring some right out into the hill too. This gives a nice embankment for your water. And I think I'll put a few up here along this road too. Don't want the road to just look like it's hanging out there. Okay. Oh, and now we'll just put a few more right in here underneath this little bridge. So now I'm going to put water on my brush, and I'm just going to start pulling the color out of the lines. Remember, with our grasses, we're going to use a brush stroke. I'll pull that color right up and out. And pine green's a great color for doing forests and trees. And I just pull a little bit of that color into the foreground. You don't have to fill the whole thing in with color. Because it's watercolor, you're just looking to just have the idea of the green grass. It doesn't need to be completely filled in. Okay, then we'll do that on the other side. I'm going to pull this color right up and out. I'm gonna pull this color in here. I'm not gonna go too high because I don't want it to look like it's growing over the bridge. I want it to stay behind the bridge, so I'm not gonna pull it into the bridge. And then these little guys here, these are good to pull right into that. You can pull them right into the rocks, into the water. Just like that. Okay. I'm going to try to pull just a little bit more into this ground. I'm going to take just a few more minutes and just darken up this water in here. As it dried, it kind of got a little lighter, and I really wanted that shadow under there to be really dark. And maybe just a few more highlights in here. Okay, and I think that's about it. So our last thing to do, as always, is to sign and date it. And that's it for our little covered bridge. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope you will like my video and subscribe to my channel, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, and have a great day.